Good morning, everyone. Today we're checking out a brand new video from Popcross Studios about the Starseed Psyche episode 16 in the Kyuserax base invasion begins. Let's hop in and see how it starts. It's a brand new arc. Let's go.
Previously on Starseed Psyche, Kyo Adachi and his fellow Super 8th soldiers
Starting on with Kyo and what I believe was called a Kyuserian butcher.
have been preparing to invade an underground Kyuserax base, and the
Kyuserax,
time has finally come for this mission to proceed. The group he is a part of, the Slayer Squadron, is going to be leading the charge into the base, and unbeknownst to the Japanese military, Kyo and his friend's ally, Phaestriel the Kyusidian, is going to use their invasion as a cover to go into the base herself using cloaking tech to look around.
I still don't think that's a good idea, but C isn't going to listen.
Hope is that she will find something that helps prove who made and sent the Kyuserax, possibly even proving the theory suggested by Repsoro scientist Dr. Anastasia Shatia that the Kyuserax are being used by humans. Faye showed Kyo, Chip, and Toshiko evidence that she had uncovered that a Kyusidian inventor named Inovrian had built drones very similar to the Kyuserax around 5,000 years ago, but it was a short-lived program that was shut down quickly. Still, if a war-hungry group of humans had somehow gotten their hands on the leftover drones in the modern day, it would explain how such advanced creatures were being used by a race of beings that still had far from that level of technology themselves. While all this is going...
Hold on, excuse me. So before we continue, one thing I want to point out real quick is this. Look, I've always thought, would this be possible, putting both blades on one arm? And by this look, yes, it is possible. That is kill-all.
Going on, Kyo is loving his first few days of being romantically involved with the woman he now believes is the fabled love of his life, fellow Super 8th soldier Toshiko Yamada. Despite the fact that Toshiko's mother, who is also on their squad, General Yamada Ritsu, is convinced the two of them being together is bad for Toshiko's career. Ritsu has openly told them that they should not be together, despite her respecting Kyo's skills and discipline as a Super 8th soldier. In spite of this, Kyo and...
Ma'am, I respect your opinion, but also I respect you to kindly off.
Toshiko have become so in sync that they can even swap control of each other's Super 8th blades while in combat.
And
though he
impressive.
Hasn't yet made any headway in seeing if he has managed to unlock his ability to use telekinesis from his past life as a Kyusidian. Kyo thinks he may have used it once accidentally, but he isn't entirely sure. Let's see how all these factors may play into the next chapters of Starseed Psyche.
Let's go.
Every soldier at the Super 8th military compound was up an hour before dawn to get flown out to Chichibu Tamakai National Park. We didn't fly all the way to the entrances to the Kyuserax base, instead stopping 4 kilometers out and jogging the rest of the way. Our suits enhanced our speed and endurance, so the jog didn't tire us out much. However,
probably took like 5 minutes.
With our suits elevating our emotions, I couldn't pretend I didn't have a bit of anxiety coursing through me. I breathed my way through it as best I could, but it was dawning on me how dangerous it could be to have Phaestriel going into the base at the same time as us.
Oh,
it was too late to stop her, but if anything went wrong and her cloaking tech stopped working, the cameras we all had attached to the chests of our suits would surely spot her, and that would just give the world even more quote-unquote proof that the Kyusidians were the ones who sent the Kyuserax.
Should be found out.
In a way, I knew that was still technically a possibility, with the new wrinkle of this Inovrian guy having invented tech like the drones, but still, I didn't want to fuel more hate towards the Kyusidians, especially since there was a good chance that this wasn't their fault.
Yeah,
when we were about a kilometer out, I started shifting back into the headspace I'd been in the night before, being excited to finally get some answers and, for once, to be attacking the Kyuserax on their home turf. Regardless of who sent them, we still needed to stop them.
Before he finishes this, I'm gonna call this thing a Kyuserax Butcher Plus because of the Gatling gun.
I just hoped if they were being controlled by...
laser gun.
Humans, possibly even Shijikaburu, then it had already been planned for this mission to be a success, unlike the last attack. All our blades were deactivated to stay more incognito as we approached the first of the 4 entrances. It was a wide and tall limestone cave mouth in the side of a large rock face. We could just barely see it through the trees when we stopped. We knew we had to be on the lookout for the new speedy Kyuserax briskers Captain Hekima had told us about.
I would still call those things raptors.
Hekima
But
gestured, sending General Ritsu and Roku Yoichi to scout ahead in different directions. They both darted off, and we just waited. I glanced over at Chip. He looked determined and gave me an assured nod. I responded with the same, then looked at Toshiko. She didn't return the gaze as she was doing her best to track her mother's movements. I then quickly scanned the rest of the group. Quinn and Akuma Calico were right next to each other, both looking determined as well. Despite having butted heads before, they had actually worked quite effectively together in training over the
Look, even the sword kind of got an upgrade.
last few days. Tony Toshima and Sake Andia looked ready too. For being guys who hadn't been on the initial roster for the squad, they'd proven to be just as skilled fighters as the rest of us in training. Finally, I looked at Hekima, who I knew was too focused to meet my gaze. There were a lot of reasons I wanted this mission to go well, but the most present at that moment was for him. I couldn't tell what exactly was going on in his head, but from our last interaction, I knew he was under a lot of pressure. I turned my attention back to the entrance. There was still no movement until Ritsu and Roku came up on either side of it, then gave the all clear. Hekima gestured us forward. As we all started to move, honestly, to this day, I still have no idea what flagged me to turn around. I think it may have been Yorick breaking some spirit guide rules or something, but whatever it was, I felt a massive urge to turn, and did so just at the last possible second. Moving so fast it was barely more than a blue and gray blur, I saw a brisker sprinting through the woods right towards us. I don't know who it was targeting with the blade on its arm, but I moved fast enough to not let it hit its target. In one single swipe, I activated one of my gauntlet blades, lunged forward, and slashed the creature's waist. I felt the clean slice and two halves of its body tumbled forward, thudding into Chip and Akuma's backs. Everybody whipped around and activated their blades. Hekima looked at me and nodded somewhat appreciatively, but before we even saw the other blurs moving through the woods, we knew what that first slain one meant. Hekima spoke through the comms. "Contact! Stealth is off the table. We're moving in on full offense." We charged ahead.
Forget stealth. Bombs raised.
With Toshiko and I falling to the back of the group. We
it.
watched behind us as we ran and very quickly saw 3 more briskers coming up on our tail. They were weaving to try and confuse us, but it didn't work. Toshiko and I stacked all our blades together like a sandwich and sent them straight back. Once they were within a few feet of one brisker, we split them all apart, slicing through 2 of the targets, but one managed to leap over the blade that came for it. We circled them all around to follow the brisker, but it was moving so fast that our blades couldn't keep up. It was going to be on us in a second. "Chip, Stonewall defense!" I called forward. Before I even had time to turn and see if he'd registered what I'd said, Chip darted back past Toshiko with his rounded blades raised like a shield on his arm. The brisker's torso crashed right into his arm and was stopped in its tracks. Chip widened his fingers and both parts of his blades shot off his arm. One moved up, slicing the brisker's head off, and the other down, carving off one of its legs. Surprisingly, it still managed to swipe an arm forward, about to stab Chip's head with its own weapon. Thankfully, Toshiko caught its arm and pulled it aside, just as our blades were returning, and hers sliced off another of the creature's limbs. We were all proud of our work, but kept moving with the squad to the cave entrance. All of us grouped up again, we looked around once more for any more briskers. We didn't see anything outside, but
keep your eyes
we knew
open.
There was likely far more waiting when we entered that cave. Hekima nodded. "Watch each other's backs in there, Slayer Squadron. Fight like a world in need of hope is watching." He led the charge and we all followed. It was hard for me not to fall into fury as we moved. If this was all being orchestrated strategically by someone, then that meant that brisker was probably supposed to kill someone. It felt like dumb luck that I'd spotted it. Thankfully,
it most likely was going to take out at least one person, probably just a leg, meaning they would have to either be killed or just taken off the mission.
There was a lot more for me to focus on than being angry once we got a minute down the tunnels. We knew the first opening was coming, but I hadn't expected just how many Kyuserax there would be waiting inside. What had been just an average limestone tunnel opened up into a massive room with steel beams supporting the walls and metal platforms holding Kyuserax ships and dozens of waiting drones. The simplicity of the platforms didn't remotely match the high-tech nature of the creatures we were fighting. It was
simple platforms but high-tech creatures? Yeah, something's off.
Difficult to believe they'd been built by the same beings. The second we came into the opening, a barrage of fire started coming towards us. The one upside of the cave's size was that we had plenty of room to maneuver. We all scattered, springing away from the opening and spreading the fire. Toshiko and I leapt off to the left, with her moving towards the ceiling and me heading down towards a platform, where a particularly fierce-looking tanky new Kyuserax was stationed. It was a creature we'd come to call a Kyuserax Gatler. It had a massive blade held on one side of its body, like the Kyuserax Butchers, the type that had managed to hurt Chip on the last mission, but attached to its other arm was a huge Gatling gun that was firing bolts of energy 20 times faster than the common drones. I let both my blades hover in front of me for defense.
I mean, I love that, but damn, I hate that.
As I flew through the air towards it. I landed down on the platform and it kept firing, now focused entirely on me, with its bolts bouncing off my blades. It started coming towards me and raised its sword. Just before it swung down, I was struck in the back by a bolt from a drone on another platform. It didn't hurt much, but it jolted my head forward enough to look down, away from the coming strike. Thankfully, I had backup. Before the Gatler could swing at me, it was forced to flip its blade flat above its head to stop Toshiko's blade fragments from coming down at it. It managed to block them, but she landed behind it, sprang forward, and punched it in the back with her gauntlet. This thing was tanky enough to not be hurled off its feet, but it took a step forward and aimed its gun towards the ground, giving me a window.
Okay, hold on. Whoever is behind this is definitely getting cocky, because look at the design of the Kyuserax Gatler's face. It looks like it has like a weird toothy smile, and it's like snarling or drooling.
I thrust both my blades forward and dug them into its chest. I pushed forward with all the strength I had, but they couldn't quite get through it. It raised its sword to swipe at me again, but then Toshiko thrust her arm forward towards my blades. I suddenly felt her strength pulling them too, and together we thrust them with all our combined might, and they carved the Gatler to pieces. It crumbled to the ground, and we gave each other an appreciative nod. Suddenly, the platform we were standing on exploded, hurling us both off it in different directions.
Shit!
I spun through the air, trying to regain my composure as I got closer to another platform on the ground. Thankfully, a hand snatched my arm and stopped my spin, pulling me more directly towards the ground. I got my feet under me and landed right next to my rescuer, Captain Hekima. I thanked him and quickly looked up to make sure Toshiko was okay. Our eyes met just before she moved on to another swarm of drones a ways above me. A bunch of the common drones were around Hekima and me as well, and started firing on us. We both blocked with our blades, and I was ready to start slicing them up, when Hekima spoke through our comms. "General Ritsu, cover Kaio and me while we handle the big one." Suddenly, General Ritsu crashed down to the ground ahead of us between the drones. She sprang towards one, catching its chest in her claw, then firing a bolt straight through its head. She hurled it at another, disorienting it, then fired 4 precise shots where its limbs met its body, blasting them all off. A dozen bolts came piercing towards her, and she managed to swing her Tekagami claw so quickly that she blocked every single one, then grabbed the tail of the new...
Hey, hold on. I wasn't worried about the tail, but as you're literally saying in the story as I was pausing...
nearest drone, swung it off...
Oh, never mind. You were talking about a drone. Yeah, I wasn't worried about putting the tail on the Gatler.
...off its feet and used it like a mace, smacking 3 more to the ground, before filling them all with holes. As much as Ritsu had been frustrating me lately with her discouragement of Toshiko and me dating, I kinda wanted to keep watching her work. Unfortunately, I suddenly realized what Hekima meant when he said, "the big one."
Oh, wait, so maybe not another Gatler? Oh, is it a Kyuserax Rex or whatever?
Eyes open, Adachi! Hekima shoved me aside just as a massive battering ram nearly the size of my body slammed down into the ground where I'd been standing a second ago. From the impact suddenly came a pulse of energy that knocked me back into a steel beam. I regained composure quickly and saw a hulking Kyuserax, as tall as a Kyusaurus, with a long, thick tail and fists formed into metal-smashing clubs. For obvious reasons, we wound up calling this thing a Kyuserax Thumper. I quickly targeted the weakest-looking spot on its body, where its leg met its waist, and sent both my blades towards it. The beast saw them coming and smacked them away with one arm, barely being scratched by the blades. Hekima took that opening to thrust both his blade fragments towards its neck. The Kyuserax ducked aside with surprising speed, and both...
I'm actually kind of impressed that whoever is making these things is able to make so many new ones so damn fast.
Blades missed, but he immediately called them back and carved into its neck from behind. The Thumper smashed one of its arms down towards him. He easily evaded, and when the pulse emanated from it immediately after, he let it hit him and simply slid back with it. He called his blades back and yelled to me, "Adachi, can I trust you to keep its eyes on you safely?" I didn't like that the implication seemed to be he thought he couldn't trust me, but I confidently said, Yes, Captain. I swiped my blades in front of its face and ran closer to the creature. It swung its arm down towards me, and I swiped my blades at its elbow. I thought that might stop its strike, but the arm kept coming. I sprang to the side far enough to get out of range of the pulse, but as I flew through the air to safety, my body thudded against something, and I heard a quiet but distinct, "Ouch!" I still managed to land on my feet, but glanced around quickly. I hadn't struck
The Estriel? Damn it, why are you in the middle of the battlefield? Get the hell out of here!
another soldier or a drone. The person I'd bumped into was cloaked, and I immediately knew what that meant. I desperately wanted to ask if she was okay, but I knew that would be far too suspicious.
Fucking run!
Theastriel's ouch may have already been picked up on the mics. She knew about the cameras and mics, so she knew she couldn't say anything to me. I hadn't hit her that hard, so all I could do was assume she was okay and keep on fighting. She may not have been a soldier like the rest of us, but I needed to trust her as much as anyone else on our team.
She needs to stay the hell out of the way.
I was honestly just glad after that it was me who bumped into her and not somebody else. We didn't need our team thinking there were cloaked Kyuserax to be shooting at and accidentally hit her. I called my blades back onto my arm and sprang towards the thumper. I jumped onto its arm and started slashing one of my blades into its elbow over.
Okay, hold on. Sorry to pause, but just by the way this artwork is going, looks like he is going to finally fully unlock his telekinesis.
And over again. I was quickly seeing progress and cutting it off,
Come on.
but then noticed something that, to me, was more pressing than my own success. Toshiko was one platform above me, brawling with 2 Kyuserax butchers, while being fired on by a bunch of drones. Hekima had told me to keep the thumper distracted, but that didn't mean I couldn't help another soldier as well. Toshiko, incoming!
Yeah,
I hurled my blades off my arm towards her. I quickly felt her take control of them and use them to block the fire coming at her, while she used her own blades to slice into the leg of one of the butchers. I started punching the thumper's elbow, but obviously wasn't dealing nearly as much damage that way.
Oh, not
I held
even.
tight to its arm as it swung me up, then slammed down into the ground. That had rattled me a bit, but what finally hurled me off was the pulse that sent me spinning away into the air.
Oh,
Thankfully,
damn
I
it.
flipped over perfectly to have my feet land against a beam, and I kicked off it back to the ground in front of the thumper. It raised both fists to slam down on me. I was just starting to wonder when Hekima was going to make his move as he fired straight down from the ceiling above. One part of his blade was on his arm, and the other flew just behind him. He thrust his arm forward, tackling all his weight into the back of the creature's neck, piercing straight through it. His other blade fired down right into the elbow that I'd just been swiping at, and stuck straight into it as well. He dropped to the ground farther to the right of the creature from where I was, leaving his blades in the creature's arm and neck. He then wrenched his arm sideways, guiding his blades to spin. They both did, but the one in the creature's arm much more so. The neck wasn't quite coming off, but the arm was sliced clean through and dropped. I was about to cheer him on.
Yeah, you see, I had a feeling that this was meant to be Hekima, but the way he was drawing this arm, I knew it couldn't be Hekima because that's a left arm. Hekima has a right arm gauntlet. And, but as you said, mistake.
But the severed arm that hit right next to me still
Actually, I guess if you want to, you could just mirror that image and be perfectly fine.
managed to send out a pulse after its impact with the ground. I was jolted sideways, flipping and landing on my face. I rolled over quickly and everything just suddenly started moving in slow motion. The thumper's still attached arm was smashing down towards me, but Hekima had seen it coming and was skidding towards me across the ground. His foot smashed into my side and rolled me just out of the creature's path, but now he was right in its way. Neither of us had our blades close enough for use, if they could have done anything anyway. I was just lying on my back watching that battering ram get closer and closer to flattening the captain. Consciously, I had no idea what to do. But thankfully, some sort of old, I guess, past life instinct took over.
Booyah!
I thrust both hands towards the coming arm and felt a massive weight pressing against me, despite the fact that I wasn't close enough to actually touch the creature. I guess I'd been right about my Cusidian telekinesis starting to awaken.
Finally!
I yelled out from the pressure, but saw that the thumper...
And this also solidifies his past race.
His arm had stopped in midair, just above Hekima. He was staring at it confused, then whipped his head towards me. The weight was overwhelming, and I shoved it sideways as best I could. It struck the ground right next to Hekima, and the pulse burst from it, sending both he and I rolling across the ground again. I sprang up quickly, grabbed his shoulder, and pulled him to his feet as well. He looked at me baffled. What was that? I shrugged and quickly said,
Explain later.
I guess even crazy alien tech can have glitches. I had no idea if he'd buy that or how that little move had looked on the cameras, but I had to at least try and play it off as a malfunction on the Thumper's part. Toshiko had finished off the butchers she was facing and sprang through the air towards the Thumper, slashing both her and my blades the rest of the way through its neck. Its head tumbled off and it finally crashed to the ground. Just as the big beast was crumbling, we saw a few dozen more Subaraith soldiers leaping into the cave. They started tearing through the rest of the drones.
Yes.
Hekima was at least acting like his confusion had completely vanished as he called through our comms. "Alright, Slayer Squadron, we're moving down to the next level." We all regrouped at the mouth of the next tunnel and headed in. I looked around at the squad and nobody seemed injured, though I did notice that the camera on the front of General Ritsu's suit had a clear slash through its lens, and the small red light was no longer on. I doubted she'd get in trouble for it being broken, as there were dozens of cameras to capture footage, but I'm sure the Chief of Staff would be at least a bit
There's a slash, though. That is something.
Annoyed that he wouldn't get much first-person footage of his top general showing off her skills with the Tekagami Claw. I saw the next cave opening coming. Quinn darted ahead of the pack and leapt right through without surveying the surroundings. That may actually have been for the best because it forced one of the new Kyuserax waiting for us to fire at the cave opening just before the rest of us reached. Quinn got well past it, and a massive explosion rocked the opening and sent stones hurtling all around us. Nobody was injured, but we all moved forward carefully. As soon as Hekima peeked over the edge, he called out, "Get down!" Another explosion struck right next to him and smashed him into the wall. He recovered quickly and sprang on after Quinn, while saying, "Heavy artillery in this cave, 4 tanks on 3 platforms, target those first." I processed what he said, then sprang forward into an even wider open cave than the last. There were more platforms, and, as Hekima had warned, there were more new Kyuserax. The tanks he referred to would come to be known as Kyuserax Bombarders, and they resembled a
I like the name, Bombarders.
Triceratops with cannon-like artillery mounted on their backs. As much as I liked the idea of going for
there's just so many dinosaur themes.
Those things, I could unfortunately also see that there were a few briskers around waiting for us to land. I wondered if I could slow them down subtly with my telekinesis to give myself an edge. I just landed on one of the higher platforms when I saw Quinn landing down in front of the closest bombarder. It took aim at her and fired, but she'd landed strategically so that once she dodged, the shot soared past her and struck another of the tanks, making it stumble to the side with a smoldering hole in its head.
There you go.
Calico then instantly sprang onto its head and thrust all her dagger-like blade fragments into it to start tearing through its internal tech. The one before Quinn took aim at her again, but
going full Doomstyle, ripping and tearing.
Before it could fire, Chip tackled his full body weight into its side and knocked it onto its back. Seeing that the bombarders were being handled sufficiently, I decided to move forward with attacking the briskers, which was good since one of them was already speeding right towards me. I hurled one blade forward and it ducked under it. I hurled the other and it evaded that as well, still coming. I swung back my fist ready to punch it in the head. I kept my other arm down by my side, out of the camera's view. I thrust it slightly forward, trying to activate my telekinesis again, but was clearly being a bit overconfident with my ability to use it so deliberately.
Yeah.
The creature did
you also new to the power, so of course you won't have perfect control.
Didn't slow at all. My punch wasn't fast enough and it thrust its blade right for my head, barely leaving me enough time to dodge aside. I managed to evade, but it still tackled me and we both tumbled off the platform. As we spun through the air, I managed to call back my blades. It elbowed me in the face, knocking me away from it, but I still flung my blades right across
what kind of robot throws an elbow?
Its body and cut it into 3 pieces. I landed with 3 more briskers setting their sights on me. I had a few theories after that about how to activate the abilities, and one was simply that I could only use it to protect other people. It had only worked so far when I was protecting Quinn back in training and Hekima on that mission. But that didn't seem right. That felt like I was giving myself a limiting belief. I knew I wasn't.
Oh, right. It would be all mental. So believe you can use it, and you should.
Technically a Kyusidian anymore, but if I had this power, I should be able to use it in any scenario like Faye did. I bet that she wouldn't limit herself to thinking she needed some special terms to use that ability. 2 briskers came at me at once, and I suddenly gave myself a new aim so I could more freely test this power. I raised an arm to block one brisker with my blade, so it had to weave around me and try coming in from behind. The other I let take a swipe at me, but I leapt up and slightly back. It slashed across the front of my armor, but didn't quite hit the target I was hoping for. The one that weaved around came back in so fast I nearly let its swipe hit my face. I swung both arms up and caught its arm before it could hit me. Then, hoping it was subtle enough, I moved its blade and thrust it right into the camera lens on my chest. It smashed the camera to bits, and hopefully the mic as well. The red light did turn off. Regardless of whether the mic was out, as long as there were no more eyes on me, I could be a bit more bold with my telekinetic attempts. The third brisker was coming in behind me, and instead of swiping a blade, I ducked under its arm and, as hard as I could, thrust my palm up towards it, but didn't make physical contact. Its arm did move slightly upward, making its whole body move up, and it rolled over top of me into another of the briskers. I then sent my blade straight through the both of them, chopping them to bits. Before the next one even started running at me, I glanced around quickly to ensure nobody was looking, then thrust both hands forward like I was doing a Hadouken out of Street Fighter.
Hadouken!
It was incredibly fun watching the Kyuserax fly backwards off its feet. Before it could even land, I swiped both my blades through the air across its body in opposite directions and carved it apart. I wanted to cheer excitedly, but my heart nearly stopped as I saw Ritsu land down next to me. Had she seen me? Was I wrong about nobody looking? Thankfully, she just reluctantly said, "I need cover." She gestured towards the entrance to the next tunnel, where there was another of the Gattlers firing from a distance at the rest of our soldiers. I nodded, then charged towards it, with both my blades forward like a shield once again. It quickly saw us coming and started firing. I made sure to glance back and see that Ritsu was still covered, and kept moving. With all the bullets deflecting off my blades, I started thinking about Faye. Was she in here? Could a stray bullet hit her as she was trying to move farther down the tunnels too? Thankfully, that concern prompted an idea that I really should have thought of when I was first fighting a Gatler. I aimed my blade slightly inward so the bullet stopped bouncing wide and started rebounding right back at the Gatler. It held its broadsword in front of it to block some of the fire, but a bunch of the shots started pelting its arms and legs. So, finally, it stopped shooting and waited for us to get close.
Finally.
As soon as it stopped, Ritsu sprang over my shoulder and swung her Tekigami claw. The Gatler held its blade between her and it, but she punched the blade so hard it smashed back into the Gatler's face. It used its tail to keep itself from falling backwards, but Ritsu swung herself over its blade behind its back and fired a dozen shots into its spine. It wasn't quite enough to take it out, though, and the creature
If that thing was any kind of organic, it would never be walking again. Plus, it'd be dead.
dropped its gun, swung its arm back, and grabbed Ritsu by the leg. She swiped her claw across it, but didn't slash hard enough to sever its limb. The Gatler swung her in front of itself and moved to cut her in half with its blade. I leapt forward, sticking both my blades into its path to block, then thrust both feet up to kick it in the face. I even added a bit of telekinetic shove in there, so I hit it hard enough for it to fly off its feet and roll back a short ways into the tunnel behind it. As it fell, I let one of my blades hover in the air and used that hand to catch the general, pulling her away from the Gatler. We both landed and she stared at me for a brief second, before giving an appreciative nod. I started thinking, maybe I could use this mission to get in Ritsu's good books. Whether I could or not, she was clearly okay with us working together a bit longer. She said through the comms, "Captain Hakama, permission for Private Adachi and myself to move into the next tunnel." He quickly replied, "Affirmative, but stay close to each other and have each other's backs down there, at least until the rest of us catch up."
Roger.
"Confirmed," she said, then charged towards the rising Gatler. It swung its blade in a broad swipe, but she slid right under it, then sprang up to both uppercut it right in the chin, while also firing shots right through the bottom of its jaw. It collapsed backwards to the ground, and this time, wasn't getting back up.
Oh, yeah.
I liked the idea of taking its blade or gun to try and use myself, but, of course, those immediately started fizzling and deteriorating once the creature was slain.
Oh, I honestly hate that part, though.
Ritsu and I both started heading down into the tunnel.
Fine.
She glanced back at me and looked at my chest, likely noticing that my camera was destroyed as well. She turned forward and said, "Unfortunate, neither of us will be able to provide footage of our endeavors." I nodded.
It is a shame.
Yeah, I'm sure the Chief of Staff would have liked some shots of you using your claw to take down that big one just now. If you don't mind me asking, how are you feeling using that thing? Without turning back, she said,
Yeah, I don't think many people, or really anyone's asked, how does it actually feel? Like, is it a complete arm replacement? Is it a glove? Are you wearing it?
"I feel as though I am doing my duty as one of the Chief of Staff's generals."
Okay,
I knew I was pushing my luck. I knew this wasn't putting me any farther into her good books, but I felt like I still had to ask. Would you have volunteered to get the implants if the chief of staff hadn't asked you to? Again, she didn't turn as she said, "That is irrelevant. My superior made a request, so I obeyed, as the chain of command demands."
Well, no, yeah, that makes sense, but he's asking if your boss didn't ask you to get it, would you still willingly get it? And, like, the answer would be, yeah, I'd probably still get it, or no, I would have no reason to get it.
It was a bit like talking to
Simple.
a brick wall. I knew I wasn't going to get anywhere with my current course, so I just said, "Well, you are incredible with that thing, General, and it's an honor to fight alongside you." I wasn't entirely sure I meant that. I mean, I knew I did in a way, ignoring the fact
It's
that she
still
wanted me to
respect.
stay away from Toshiko, and my disagreement with her unflinching belief that your superiors always know better than you. I
Yeah,
did
they
think
do not.
Ritsu was pretty awesome. As much as she frustrated me, I was glad Japan had someone like her fighting to take down the Kyuserax. I just hoped it wouldn't break her to find out that her superior may very well be one of the people behind the Kyuserax. Or, actually, maybe a part of me did hope that. I mean, I'd seen firsthand that being broken can be the
yeah.
first step necessary to put yourself back together better than before.
Oh, yeah.
We saw the next cavern opening coming
Sometimes to rebuild yourself in gold, you must first crumble.
up ahead, and just as we were getting close
Crumble
enough
like
to see out of it,
sand.
we heard something from the tunnel behind us. Before either of us could turn around, Toshiko fired down the path and skidded to a stop right in front of us. "Captain Hekima, I've joined Tadachi and General Yamada, reporting on the next level soon." Before Hekima could respond, another, more chipper voice came speeding up from
Chip.
behind as well. "I'm backing him up too, Captain." "Acknowledged," Hekima replied. Toshiko glanced at us both, noticing both our cameras were slashed. Hers and Chip's were still fine, so whatever we faced next, there would be plenty of footage of it. Which, honestly, I'm kind of glad about now in retrospect. I nodded at Toshiko with a smile to affirm that I was
yeah.
fine, and to Chip to show that I was ready. The four of us all moved forward, but slowed our pace slightly as we heard a ferocious roar bellowing up from the next cave.
Uh-oh.
We all held our gauntlets up at the ready and moved as far from each other in the
It must finally be time for the Kyuserax Rex.
cave as possible to
The
spread
Kyuserax.
out any potential fire. When we got to the opening, we saw an absolute monstrosity of a Kyuserax, a beast that only felt fitting to refer to as a Kyuserax.
Kyuserax. Oh, that is gonna be the biggest mech ever. Oh, next week's episode is gonna be baller. Cannot
If
wait.
you're enjoying Starseed Psyche and you're not watching my other ongoing series, you might want to go check out something like Fear of the Demon Hunters, which is now completed, and I'm currently working on a
Mytholethal.
bonus chapter 4 for the book release, or maybe the Trismegistus Academy, which is still ongoing and is probably going to be the next series to wrap up. Because even though I once said this series was going to be 16 episodes, more realistically now it's going to be like 22 to 24 episodes.
I could
so
see
still
that.
a fair amount to go. But anyway, besides that, that's all for today, except of course for ending this video on some kind of positive or inspiring note. And the thought I want to leave people with today is a quote from the 13th century poet Rumi, who
Ooh.
simply said, "As you start to walk, the way appears." Which is to
Okay.
say that clarity on your path towards achieving something that you want to achieve comes from starting to take action. You
have
don't
to
get
start
that
the
clarity
path.
on what you need to do
Nice.
before taking any of the action. So whatever it is you want to start moving towards, even if you think you have no idea how to get there, just start moving, start doing something, and the way will slowly become clear.
You gotta
I hope
take
that's
that first
inspiring.
step
I love you all,
forward.
and I'll see you all in the next episode on Monday. Goodbye.
Alright everyone, and that's going to be the end to today's video, and I hope you all enjoyed this. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe for more. Link to the original will be in the description below, and I'll see all of y'all next time when we flick back on. Till then, this is Fox, signing out. Peace.